employability is one of the big areas what we are asking, and there is open questions and then there is some statistics. But I would say that if we are asking for the students, how do they see the opportunities to work in Finland? They see that they do get that from University of Helsinki, they do get an excellent degree. They do see that has a good possibility to work in Finland. But then we are at the open questions, we are asking what kind of problems, and so they see the most biggest problem is the language. It is the issue that if they are thinking about having a career as an academic at the university, then they see that, okay, I can manage there without having a knowledge of Finnish. That's a possibility. This is the way your students see it. But in case they would want to have an employability somewhere out of this university, and we know that most of the international students, it's only part which continue as a researchers. So mostly they see that in case they do have a knowledge of Finnish, they see their possibilities quite positively. But in case they don't have a knowledge of Finnish or Swedish, they see it that maybe I don't have a future in Finland, and it is very sad. So that's one of the issues. One is lack of the networks. How do you get the networks in Finland? And that comes kind of like one of another issue there is like, how do you get to meet Finnish students? How do you get to meet other international students? How do you get to meet students from your own country? University of Helsinki has very heterogeneous international student body. So there are some groups which are bigger, but then there is many countries that there is not too many students from the same country. So it's not easy to meet the people from the same country, which would make it easier to make the connections. Luckily, I have to say that what has been improved in recent years is that meeting other international students from different countries. So there we have done the positive thing, but it is difficult to meet the Finnish students. That's one of the things what is difficult, and that makes networking difficult. There are several reasons why it is difficult. One is that most of the Finnish students who start from the University of Helsinki, they have studied their bachelor already there. So they have kind of like started their studies already 3 years, and they have made already some network there. So when they come to the master level, where we have most of our international students or PhD level, they already have their network, so they do already have their friends. So it's kind of like how to get to know them. It's not easy. It's definitely something what we need to work on. And we are working with it, for example, with the student union, and thinking about how the student union is going to make it more appealing and welcoming for the international students. It's also how to do the curriculum. For example, a few years ago, there was one feedback session from one of the faculties, and they're like, maybe we shouldn't have all our international exchange students be in one group and Finnish students in another group. So, yes. so there is things. I mean, but this is a few years ago, so I do hope that the mix has happened. But these are the issues, how to do it, and it's definitely another thing is like what the international students want is the career advice from academic staff. That is something that has come from the beginning. But then our academic staff is thinking that I do have knowledge only from this academic, as a research career, I've done my whole career at the university. What I can tell about the life outside of the university. And that is something that we are working on how to do that. And a few years ago, we have had in our curriculum, there has been parts of these employability studies for the degrees, but the thing is that mostly those are in the bachelor level. So, so it means that if you come for the master level, it is something that we have to figure out a little bit more. And it varies, of course, from field to field. Yeah, so these are some of the issues.
Thank you for that. Quivine, I mean, as an international, how have you been able to reach that gap? How have you been able to make Finnish friends? Have you been able to do that? Have you succeeded? Do you have one Finnish friend at least?
That's a difficult question. I will just fast start by saying that she's raised very good points, and I do not know though that having Finnish friends are succeeding very much at networking. It's a question of where you start from. So this is how I think about this. So this is how I see this, or at least this is how I analyze it. I think of it as from a citizenship studies point of view. You have a country that decides these are the people we let in, and this is how we let them in. This is how far you can go. It's all predetermined. So when you're being given a B permit or an A permit, there was a lot of thought behind it, and it's basically a cage. So different cages of different sizes. With this much you can go up, and this much you can go sideways. And so that's how I see an international student migrant, especially an international student migrant from Africa at a Finnish university. So you join in at the master's level, you have a lot of deficiencies to make up for, and making friends is not going to fix some of your deficiencies. It might fix your language issue problem over time. So over a period of 2 years, eventually your Finnish skills got a little better, but then you will have been past the point where it would have helped you to integrate in the university where, or the department, the faculty where you're doing your study. It will have been beyond the time when it could have helped you take all the courses that would have been useful to you. So attacking this thing from any midway, or it's not helpful. For me, the issue is we really need an understanding, a comprehensive understanding of what exactly is happening here. What is the thought behind international students in Finland, all kinds of international students? The intention for a Chinese student in Finland is very different from the intention the government has for a Nigerian student in Finland and an American student in Finland. And I know that these things might sound horrible and cynical, but I do think there is some truth to this. You can reject it, but you can also try to think about it. So as if you're an African student in Finland, or you are an American student in Finland, I would then encourage you to look at your position, the capital you come with. So that capital is your nationality, that capital is your gender, that capital is the discipline in which you are studying, that capital is so many things, and then situate yourself according to your capital vis-a-vis what the host country needs, because we all know what Finland wants. So for example, when I come here to do my master's in a social science program, I should temper my expectations. What exactly is there for me to do after I get my MA in development studies? How much space is there? And then for me, who does not speak good Finnish, does not have a network, because my networks took 3 years to develop, because I was not part of a union, because I was not part of all these communities that I only found out about 5 years later after I left the university. So I know I've said a lot of things, and I'm not so sure there was a trail.
There was somebody there.
Yeah,
Something
as
there.
long as there's something there. But yeah, so have I made a Finnish friend? Yeah, I'm really working hard at carving out a space for myself at my university. It took me time to realize I needed to. So for the past 2 years when I was a master's student, I was focused on doing my master's, writing my thesis. And then I finished writing my thesis and I figured, oh, I need to find something to do. And then I realized, damn, it was a little bit late. And then I went to my supervisor, my thesis supervisor, how can you help me? It did help, because my thesis supervisor said that, oh, you did say you wanted to do a PhD. There's something here that you could apply for. It is good for somebody waiting to do a PhD. Had I not gone to him, I would never have known about that opportunity. I would never have applied. And then I applied and I got in, and there was a group of people, and then I kept learning. But it was a little late. to start at that point. So if there's anything I can do to make a difference, I would make sure that all African students, from the moment they're starting their master's program, I would make them know that you're starting the race a little late. There's a lot of making up you need to do, and you need to be very quick at doing it, which might mean that you jeopardize your focus on your education. Then I don't know if it's a really good solution anyway.
Yeah. So it's a lose-lose situation if you do not advocate for yourself. That's what you're saying.
Advocating for yourself, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that brings me to Melissa. Melissa, you said something in your introduction that you do a lot of advocacy work. You advocate for international staff and how they situate themselves in places. Following what Quivine has just said, how will an African compared with you, an American, actually, advocate for themselves without having to walk up to someone and say, hey, look at me. Is there anything available for me? Do I have to fight someone or, cry or burn my bra on the street, do something? How do we do this as internationals?
Yeah, and I think it's really important, the point that Quivine just made and which you're now referencing, which is that we have to kind of look at this situation in an intersectional way. That if you're coming from the United States or Nigeria, if you're a Black or white man or woman from a rich background, or all of the things that we think about when we think about intersectionality, they also come into play here. This is not only in kind of what is perhaps expected of you and how you will proceed, but it's also about how easy or difficult it is for you to get visas and to renew your visas. So there are many things at play here, and I think we need to address those at some point within this discussion, but on a broader scale within society very soon. But when I think about advocacy, I think there's at least two different kinds of advocacy. There is the individual advocacy, me advocating for myself and for my own needs, for my own desires, my own wishes. And that's something which is really important. And we shouldn't kind of take away this individual proactive advocacy. In my experience, doing this kind of transition from being a master's student into being a working person at the university, it was a lot of me asking people questions because I didn't know the answer. So there is this kind of personal advocacy that you have to do, but it's not always the most effective way, especially if we're thinking about making systemic changes of the kind that Quivine has been discussing. There needs to be advocacy as a group. And here I think the unions are an important actor in this field. It's obvious that if we work together, that we're able to do more, we're able to argue more effectively as a group. And I think the unions have done a good job in establishing pathways for advocacy within the universities and within the ministry. There are different ways to get involved. Antero was already talking about being a shop steward, and I'm not sure if that term is familiar to people, but what that role is basically, it's a nominated kind of position of trust that a person is put in order to help solve problems. So if you think that something has not gone right at the university or with your employer, you can contact your shop steward and ask them to help you and to help clarify the situation. So this could be if you feel that you're owed, or for example, if you should have salary negotiations, which were not held. So you can contact your shop steward who will help you figure out the system. And I'm sure Antero will correct the way that I'm putting this, but just a very, very kind of simple explanation of their role. So within the union, there are these people such as the shop stewards who you can contact to help you advocate for yourself. But then there are the local branches of the union who are, for example, at the University of Helsinki, the University of Jyväskylä, who are advocating on a larger issue for the people who are their members. The union that I'm a part of is for Finnish university researchers and teachers. So they're advocating for the kind of needs of those staff members. This allows you to push in a way that you would not be able to as just, me, Melissa, single researcher. but it's much more effective as a collective. There are definitely problems, and I don't want to say that it's a perfect system because it's not, but it is more effective. I wanted to also bring out a few just very short points, and I have 4 of them. The first is that as an international talent, and I think that I mentioned this already in my introduction, you might not be familiar with the working culture and the expectations of the working environment in which you're placed. So knowing what are, for example, the acceptable practices, what are not, what are the institutional practices, what are not. For example, I went, I would say 5 or 6 years without ever having salary negotiations at the university, which was completely not okay. I mean, this is not how it should go, because I didn't know that I should have salary negotiations.
Sorry, Melissa.
Yeah.
Can Antero tell us a little more about that? How is it possible that a member of a union will go 5 years without knowing that they should or had to negotiate their salaries? Sorry.
It should happen that way.
Does that mean that?
So basically what of course, as Melissa said, that we have local branches in all of the universities. So of course the local branches have different kind of ways how to educate our members. But we have sometimes done perhaps every second year about giving guidance about, so that this is now the salary system, so that it consists about these are the issues, and now this collective agreement with the universities will dictate about how to proceed if you want to have your salary checked and so on. So that's something yeah. So if there would be any questions about salary and how salaries, what are the reasons why you are getting this amount of money as a salary, then the shop steward, the junior shop steward would be able to assist them. But the problem is sometimes that when we have organized this kind of academic self-defense course, which is basically that we have actually invited all of our members, but we have also invited all of our international staff who are not necessarily our members. And there's in our university, I think that we have a few hundred international staff working there. And then when we are organizing this kind of issues, so we are saying that, okay, please come to here and have a discussion about your salaries, about your annual work plans and holidays and so on, sick leaves, family leaves and so on. And then we send the invitation for 400, 500 people, and then 6 or 7 against this issue. So because it's not possible for me to go visit everyone. So when we have sometimes we have tried to organize this issue. Okay, now lately we have been doing much more on webinars, so that it is much more convenient way to pass information. Yeah.
Dr. Pascal, you've been smiling, a small smile that tells me that you may not actually agree that some of these things you said. Does it apply to you? What are the I can see problems that you want to talk about. Can I hear?
Just meeting Antero for my first time, and I'm learning that he's one of the stewards, because I've worked also with some of the stewards, and I would speak from there like a cultural problem. I'm not saying that all the stewards are like that, and then I will dive into it as a systemic issue. And the steward said, "Oh, can this type of problem be happening with you?" He shouted. Oh, when he spoke with the administration, the language changed. So it's often the case that the first, they call it in French, réaction à chaud, the first hot, when the foreigner brings this thing, but when they speak with Finns, they respond back to you. He was even convincing me, why don't you abandon this issue and look for a job somewhere else? So if I smiled, it was not okay. But I would like to thank the Finnish authorities, use this opportunity to thank them, because This is a country where they can react to problems. This is like the fifth meeting I'm having. I've had some with Miriam and made recommendations. So there is the wheel now in Finland on how the egg would be burst. They know some of those problems. So I want to congratulate some of the authors. I've received phone calls and, you know, how did this happen? And so this is, Finland must be praised for that. That when there are issues, authorities can listen. That is the first thing. Even if we have the impression that they will keep it in the cupboard, sometimes they implement it without mentioning where it came from. But that is a very good starting point. I would like to say that as a higher education scholar, a university is a creature of the nation state. This is what I would like to tell the Finnish authorities. It's a creature of a nation state. The university might have been, it's in one of the international organizations, like everywhere, like it's where you can pop in and speak English. You don't pop into any company in Finland. So from that perspective, it has maintained that standard, but it is still the creature of the nation state. Why I'm saying this, the way these issues of foreigners in Finland has been handled, it linked to the history of Finland. It is linked to a general phenomenon. It's been said, it's written on LinkedIn, that Finns are afraid that foreigners will take their country. Okay? When you start looking at it, I'm still researching to know which American was ever a rector of a Finnish university, down to heads of department. There are exceptions. I just looked at it today. Vasa University has been cited for having 30% of its staff as international. I saw Oulu having international. I saw Oulu yesterday. I'm still to check whether it's about 100. There's the right that they have 100 nationalities. And somebody asked me whether it was staff or it was with students. Okay, now you get to start knowing now how many of those foreigners have administrative positions in the university. How many of those foreigners have administrative positions? I saw in my case where practically a project I was building, it showed that I had to end somewhere. Meetings held over the project without me. Sometimes my slides were taken, changed into Finnish language. I would, Google search and see that, look, this is what it's. So I'm not going into the details. The reason why I say it's the creator of the nation state, I get into another issue. You ask, how do you have friends who are Finnish friends? I mean, I used to be quite lonely here earlier. I used to go to bars. You can have friends from bar, they're never real friends. I also had some friends, people I thought even with whom we go to Africa. But when I had a problem, they all ganged up. So this is linked to the end. We cannot dislink the university from the entire. These things are happening in other structures. The university are there. We cannot dislink it. During one of my very terrible situations in a bar, I was sitting, I bought a drink for myself. Somebody came in so drunk and said, this man must go out. I don't want to associate it always to racism. He was drunk because he was drunk. And the barman came and you must go, you must leave. Me. So I asked, how is the logic of these people? I am to be insured by you. I bought my drinks, I'm sitting down. This is happening in universities. This is, I try to, sorry, not university, in my case, where something was very odd, and they made sure they protected the film. I have the letters. Some experts are saying we should publish it out. I have situations, I mean, Quivine is here, they know this situation. They made sure, I mean, Melissa would be surprised that there are letters from lawyers said, no, I was never associated to the project. Because, or if I went abroad with the project, they say I went on my own. They made sure. So who protects the foreigner in this country? Who protects the foreigner when this happens like that? And
sorry, Dr.
one of the last recommendations we made to the ministry is that there should be there should be more discussions with the labor union to empower between the ministry and the labor union to empower the labor unions to handle this. I found out in my experience they were escaping words like discrimination and so on and so forth, even though I congratulate them excellently, because they said, look, this situation was very unethical. So we recommended, one, that they should empower the labor union more, because the labor union best know. The second thing which we have recommended is to talk with funders, foundations. Foundations may be part of the structure that can be steering this foreigner marginalization thing.
Yeah, but
So
these are things that we'll talk about in the recommendation.
Yeah.
Let's not get to the recommendations now, because we still have quite a few things to talk about. From what I've heard Dr. Pascal talk about, there's a problem with upward career mobility of international students. Rebekka, can you kind of shed more light? Is it what students have been complaining about that you know about? As part of the barometer data collection, is that something you're aware of? If you are aware of it, what is the University of Helsinki doing to actually help jumpstart the upward career mobility of particularly doctoral students, doctoral researchers in the university?
I would say that at the moment we are mostly working with the issues for the master degree students and having the, for example, program for the master level students. PhD students, I have to say I'm not really sure. This is the issue that I'm not sure. I know that we are doing. Yeah, I have to say this is a bit out of my knowledge. But the thing is that I actually think that the person is done the master's. We kind of like have the feeling that if you are already in a PhD level, then you know these things. But that's not the case, especially if you are international PhD student. And this is definitely something that we need to focus more and tell them all about issues. And as Quivine said, that there is things that she wouldn't like to know when she came, and kind of like at the point earlier that you need to get a friend or you need to do things like that and so on. So this is something that what we have to develop is kind of like the orientation states already, and telling which things are important besides that you do your studies. And it's not easy if many of the students, for example, if they are having paying for their studies and so on, and thinking about how do you already also have the money for your living and living costs and something like that, and how do you have a time to make the friends, and how do you have time to do different kind of things. So it's not easy solution, but that's definitely something that we need to work more for the orientation and so on. But the thing is that my knowledge is most for the master level students and PhDs. I'm not sure that.
Antero, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. So well, okay. I have also some kind of background as an employability researcher, so a few years back. But actually, I think that most of the Finnish universities have made a commitment to follow the European Center for Researchers and the Code of Conduct for Recruitment of the Researchers, which is the European Commission, well, basically white paper, and there is a mention about this this mentoring of researchers and having discussion about career mobility. And I think this is something also University of Helsinki has made a commitment to so that to follow it. Unfortunately, this hasn't really been the case. But then when we think about this, especially now when we think about those about careers after PhDs. So currently the situation is about in Finland there's about 1,800 PhDs coming every year. 1,708. And only 30% of these people, these doctors, will be able to find a place at the Finnish universities or Finnish research institutions. 70% of all of our doctors have to find employment somewhere else than university and researchers. I think that I haven't now got the latest statistics. I assume that would be even higher for international PhDs. But this is the reality. So when we are thinking about careers at the Finnish university of research institutions, so only 30% of doctors will be able to find research work. And this means that there has to be now ways how it would be make it much more easier to find employment some other places. And as there has been discussion going on, so for example, unfortunately, at the Finnish employment at the moment or working at the moment, the knowledge of Finnish language is almost vital. It's very important. And then I think that now at least some universities are now trying to make this kind of things so that for those who are doing their PhD as an early stage researcher, so basically are getting money to make their PhDs, so that they would be able to use every week they would be able to go to Finnish language course for 2 weeks, over 2 hours every week. So this would be able to make it much more easier to find employment somewhere else. So that's some. But then
Has this been implemented?
I think that it's going to be implemented. Yeah, it's been implemented. I think that
In which university?
University of Helsinki.
Yeah, and University of Eastern Finland is also going to start it. I think that from the beginning of
so all our staff have the right to do 2 hours of language courses.
Yeah.
But then sorry, something keeps on ringing in my head. I keep on hearing staff. What about doctoral students who are not staff? Doctoral students who are not branch researchers? What happens to those people? Are they staff?
They have a different status. No, they're not staff.
Then what? How do you bridge the gap for those people?
I think that is a very big thing with the orientation, because I mean, as a students, they are able to study for free, of course, at the language center.
Yeah, and they can still take language.
They can take language courses from there. So it's possible to take them free. But do you realize that that's something you need? That's another question. And the one thing is, because the University of Helsinki is one of the top research universities, we are not only thinking that our researchers and PhD students would end up working in Finnish universities. They are also thinking it kind of like globally, that they might want to work somewhere else. And that's the one thing what we have been really thinking. And the same thing with our master level students. We are not always thinking that do they want to continue working in Finland, but do they want to work somewhere else in the world? And that has been the big issue. And nowadays we are kind of like realizing that Finland is aging population, and maybe it would be smart that they would want to have this PhD students and master students staying in Finland and working here. And now we kind of like starting to work towards that and doing the steps to how to do it with the mentoring and trying to fix having language studies there during the studies and so on. We do have this program on a moment called Language Schools, which is kind of like we are doing different kind of ways how it could be more flexible, for example, to study Finnish after your studies, during your studies, and maybe before your studies. So different kind of issues. It started last years now we're working for that and trying to figure out the solutions to make it easier to study Finnish and Swedish. So that's the one issue.
Yeah. If I may say one of the big systemic changes that has happened actually with the change of law now, that those people who are now coming to make the masters in here, so that for the students residence permits now, so they are now able to get their residence permit for the whole duration of this. So basically, if it's a 5-year master's degree, when you are doing a bachelor's, they need to apply only for one start, which is a big difference. And now currently, what we try to do it so that it should be the same for the PhD students. So but unfortunately, that wasn't. We weren't able to get it on the last legislation, but now there's a working group thinking about this, so that for those who are needing a residence permit to do their PhD, so that they would be able to get this for 4 years in a way, so that they would need to show that they have enough income for the first year. It's the same as students, and now there's this working group which has, I think that it's going to end its work on June. So we are trying to influence that so that it would be, because that would be the residence permit issue is one hell of a mess for our implementers. That's something that is actually I'm helping a lot of the members.
I have to say that the international student parameter visa procedures are one of the things that we are having a lot of the issues, and it's something that Another thing is how to open the language.
Is it possible to ask questions?
We're going to come to the audience soon. Sorry, Dr. Pascal. Quivine.
I had a thought a long time ago. I'm not so sure it's so good, but yeah, again, going from my research, I try to apply that to reality. That's something that I would want to emphasize for looking to grow your academic career in Finland. So it's good to establish that ground knowledge, as it has been very clear that opportunities are very few. And beyond knowing that opportunities are very few, it's important to understand the dynamics of the opportunities and what happens depending on how you enter that labor market. So how you enter is very important for how it ends, because at least a lot of research on how labor markets functions, one of this, the segmentation theory. Labor markets dualize, they divide into the good part and the bad part. The reason that happens is the few people who get to the good part realize that, oh, it's really good. And they also know that there's so many people who will want to come in. So they develop these internal institutions that make it so that you all can't join them. And then you all remain down here and you remain in the secondary sector that is very open to market mechanisms. So blatant competition. So you've had the statement staff. I don't know how many of your PhD students, but PhD students in Finland are rarely staff. The most, it's an illusion. When you apply for a PhD position in Finland, you will almost always get it. I don't know who has ever been rejected when they applied for a PhD position in Finland. And the reason why it is not difficult to get a position to study a PhD in Finland is because they don't have to do so much for you. They give you the study rights, it means nothing. You have to find your funding and you have to find your way to do a proper PhD. And once again, also, it really matters what you're studying in Finland if you want to remain in Finland, especially in Finnish academia. Once again, there are some disciplines that are not valuable in Finland, they may be valuable somewhere else. And so we have to be very realistic with ourselves. And I know that occasionally, someone has started a PhD because they were caught up in a precarious situation. So you're doing your master's, you finished it, is this period, you don't have a job, you're probably doing something nice like cleaning or something. And so you need to find validation. One of the ways you can validate yourself is sign up for a PhD and apply and you get it and all of that. Then you find yourself doing a PhD that won't even ever have a place really in Finnish academia. So that's one thing to look out for. But then going back to that segmentation, it requires a real understanding of how Finnish universities operate. For like the career part. What does it take to become an academic in Finland? So what is it that you want to become? Is it a university lecturer? Is it a university teacher? Is your dream to be a professor? And if your dream is to be a professor, what does the tenure track system look like in Finland? At least I can tell you, it's crap. There's very little tenure track opportunities. There is. But name one Black person you know who is in a tenure track position in any Finnish university for the past 20 years. So yeah, at least be aware of that. So if you want to be content with being a university teacher or a university researcher, then good, go learn the Finnish language exceptionally well and network very well, because you need administrative skills, you need that language skills, and have a topic area that sells. For example, I don't know, teaching. Again, that has a position.
We're coming to recommendations.
Oh, sorry. But yeah.
Dr. Pascal, you be ready.
Yeah, Antero, I see a little bit of reason in what you said. Actually, some officials told me that we must face the truth. Some officials told me that, yeah, this problem is being caused by the fact that there used to be 500 people who got PhDs.
Yeah, in
Early on,
yeah.
and now there are 2,000. The figure I got was approximately 2,000. So it's important also. Is it okay for us, the foreigners, to console ourselves? Because when it happens like that, and only 30% would be in the academia, then this is where you start seeing the short contract, the funny short contract. That's where that funny short contracts come in. Some people, I mean, it may be reasonable for some countries to protect their nationals. Let us say the truth. Okay, so this is not something for foreigners to take with hard feeling, but we must accept this truth. You hate us talking about recommendations, they will keep coming. In every reform, after a period of time, they have to look at the excesses of the reforms.
Yeah.
The 2009 University Act in Finland, it has to come and tell the débordement. Like professor, I mean, I went from 6 months contract, 8 months contract, 2 months contract, 4, and they were, when I was going out, they were even giving me 1 month. It's crazy.
So I've worked 6 months,
Yeah.
6 weeks.
So in every reform, this reform took place in 2009 and was granting autonomy to the university. It is time to look at some of the excesses. If you look at some of these short contracts, they come from individual professors. Human resource departments only implement what the professor who is saying. So I think it would be nice to look at some of the excesses of this. I know that, look, this reform was made to make universities more entrepreneurial, take more risk for themselves, invest, but there are always, I mean, the European reforms, every country in Europe has had this reform where it was university attached to ministries, nation states, and then each time they lose it, there are excesses. So the same government has to come back and re-regulate the reforms. So this is where you see these excesses of short contracts coming from. It's part of the excesses of the, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that same University Act says the ministry does not interfere in human resource issues. So, but there is always something to pick after a reform. Then look, we gave you this, you are misusing it, we are taking it back. Because I have no better word, short contracts is a very dirty career practice. The person goes, the person is used, comes out with stress and so on. The stress when that contract is going to finish, you don't know when it is coming from. In most universities, maybe developing countries, they sign once. Once you put their signature after a PhD, it is 4 years. In some countries I know, then maybe they say, no, we will give you 2 years for product. This thing really has to be looked at. There are usually things they go and say, look, we gave you this. You overtook it, you overused it, we are taking it, but they have to renegotiate some of these things to get the system a little bit balanced.
Yeah, I agree with you. Sorry, Antero. So, Melissa, upward career mobility and short contracts seems like they go hand in hand for foreigners. What do you agree with that, or do you have dissenting opinion?
No, I think that we have two issues here in the sense that there's the systemic issue and then there's a kind of university level system. And it's already been said, and I think we should acknowledge that the issue of the short contracts is not only for international staff. It is a widespread issue and it is very problematic. And as Pascal said, it leads to a lot of stress. But at the same time, we have to acknowledge as well that for international staff, I'm not sure if there's a difference in the percentage. My guess is that there would be, but I don't know for sure. But in any case, the impacts of the short contracts are different for people who are not Finnish and people who are not part of the EU. And this has to be recognized that the impact of a short contract on someone whose permit to live in the country is directly linked to their job contract is very hard to deal with. I also was in this situation for many years until I became a Finnish citizen. And basically the whole justification I had for becoming a Finnish citizen is so I wouldn't have to fight with this permit system every time I got a new contract. Very similar to you, I was having, 3-month contracts, 6-month contracts. It's expensive. It's very stressful. I still feel very stressed about it, even though now I don't have to worry about it. But let's acknowledge that the impact is different. I think, and the point that I wanted to make is that there is a systemic level issue of the Finnish government having specific goals in terms of achieving a certain number of international students and attracting a certain number of international students, attracting international talent. But I'm not sure that those goals align with what we are able to offer in Finland and what the universities are actually able to offer. And it's this misalignment that creates a lot of challenges. At the university system level, there are a lot of problems, and there are certain things that the university simply can't address because they are coming from the ministry level, from the kind of government level. And I think that we should acknowledge as well that the universities have improved significantly, at least since when I've been working at the university since 2009. There have been significant improvements in how international staff are dealt with. I could name like specific things that have improved, but there have been improvements. But there is still a lot of work that can happen within and should happen within the university to improve, for example, the short-term contracts with telling and really giving international staff, and especially those that have been recruited international staff, information about the working culture here, what's expected. So there's still a lot more that can be done. So those were the points.
Thank you, Melissa. Antero, I would like to come back to you. You had a rebuttal for.
Yeah, well, I have to disagree about this University Act and its effects on the short-term contracts. It's really not the case. Unfortunately, it has been as I have been conducting the membership surveys for the Finnish Union of University Researchers and Teachers from the year 2001 away. We had at that time in 2001 we had 63% of our members were working on work-time contracts. And the last one when we did in 2018 was okay. There was 2%, so I think it's 61%. So the University Act, was so it's totally failure. I agree, but it doesn't have a link to this temporary one. And what's funny, because when the University Act was in the parliament, and actually one of the reasons for the University Act was so that the universities would be able to improve the personnel policy. And one of the issues that was especially mentioned there was that because there is so many temporary contracts now, this makes it possible to diminish the share of the temporary contracts. So, and that was actually the Finnish Parliament. Parliament has looked about this University Act 2 times, and in both cases it has mentioned that the human resources policy hasn't changed, and also the share of temporary contracts hasn't diminished in a way, because there was a change of legislation. When it was easier when we were civic servants to have temporary contracts, but now when we are workers, and we are this employment act is the one who is dictating it. It's much more. It should be much more difficult to have temporary contracts. So yeah, but the share, unfortunately, the share of the temporary contracts hasn't had an effect on the university. Actually, I looked about the statistics now for those early stage universities, basically those who are doing PhDs, and so that in 2020 for those for the Finnish people, Finnish PhD students, 66% had a temporary contract that was shorter than 2 years. It was 68% for those who were so-called third country nationals, and for those from the Europe, it was a little bit less, so it's 61. So actually, there isn't a big difference between the international staff and Finnish staff. And even when we take into account about so that what is the origin of the people, these all things are you can look from the Rebekka database, and because I calculated this for one parliamentary discussion, so that was the reason. That's based on February information, but the temporary contracts, it is one of the biggest issues or problems with the Finnish academy. So that's for sure. And to put it into perspective, so it's a bad human resources policy, because when we think that about 1/3 of the budget for the Finnish universities come from so-called outside sources. They are not coming from the Ministry of Education. Then when we look about those some Finnish research institutions, so we have some research institutes that gets about 75% of its funding from outside sources. And still they are hiring their researchers permanent basis. Universities are getting more money from the ministry, so they would be having much more possibility to have a permanent research contracts, but they are unwilling to do that.
I need to say something, Antero. There's a big difference between the impact of temporary contracts on third country nationals. So when you say 60%, 68% and 66%, there's not much difference. There is a lot of difference because it impacts the residence permit application. It impacts the security. You know, I know many people who have gone through depression over this temporary contract issue, and we keep talking about it every year. When will it change?
But I have to comment on that, so that it seems that little by little we are going to make a longer work contracts for early stage researchers, so that we would be able to get 4 years. But currently, the migration office or immigration office is not going to give a 4 years residence term, even if you have a 4 years work contract. The first one is going to be only 2 years.
They can't. It's in the law.
Yeah, that's in the law, and that is the especially that is the law, and and that's what we are trying to change, and that's one, because now there's this working group. We are trying to influence on that so that it would be so. Even if there would be these 4 year contracts, still you would have to ask for this residence permit, which is it's absurd. Let's put it this way. To put it more, not so.
Dr. Pascal, briefly.
I mean, maybe I'm talking theories. If they had asked me that, look, we want to reform this reform, what would be the, I have seen how the professors dish out the 1 month or 2 months human resources is part of the autonomy granted by the 2009 University's law. It's not only about this. We've seen a rector fired, but the rector became too powerful. Okay, it's all of these things are when reforms give the right to the person. When I had my own case, there was absolute willingness to intervene from so many people, including even ministers. But the law doesn't permit the ministry to intervene on the issues like that. It's all about the law. And somebody told somebody that autonomy is not the license to kill. This issue is dirty, also for the system. So it's not only about the short contract issue. I would like to say I keep congratulated because I've lived here for long and seen these things changing. Sometimes when they change, I feel like it was me 17 years ago that they gave me already. I passed the stage of the B permit and so on and so forth. So the things are changing, and there is a willingness to change. I would like to say completely that this language thesis that adds to the career of researchers, I don't believe in it. The Finnish government has invested so much on employers. It is time to invest on job seekers. It is time to pay attention to change the mindset of the employers. I congratulate some of the things I was reading recently, that you can now have a degree by going through the employment office. There's some regulation that it is time to focus on employers and stop this issue. Finland is a good country, it's a nice country. There should be allowance for somebody to give from the United States, come here and do his things as an excellent researcher without his contract being mixed to this language issue and so on. So I don't believe in all these cases. I have, terrible cases. You have a daughter here, was born here. My own child was born here. You have a daughter here, was born here, and speaking Finnish, native speaking in Finnish language, and somebody has to call somewhere to say, look, this is my daughter, before they start looking at her application. So this we need to think. I agree that we need to think beyond this language issue, because we need also those excellent researchers from Canada or wherever who should come here and fit because of their excellence, and not just this language issue.
Thank you for that.
But I have to say that PhD students saw the possibilities working at the academia positively. And for that, the knowledge of Finnish was not requirement there. So that I have to say they saw it positively. But the thing is that they all can't work at the academia and the researchers. So that's the one thing.
Richard, nothing else to add?
Yeah, I was going to just make a summary and say, when Pascal speaks, he speaks in terms of what should change and the direction that change should go to, if somebody was listening to him, if somebody was taking the point from him. The way I speak, I don't speak about what should change, because I do not know, and I don't think somebody is listening, at least now. Maybe if we do write something and then send it to someone, then I can talk in terms of how should and what should. So for now, I will keep talking about it in terms of what can I do now for my tomorrow, because as it is, we can be positive as much as we want to, but be realistic in that, because as it is, we are saying that some things are getting better. Sure, some things are getting better, but at the end of the day, the business model, the frame of the business model is still very messed up, and the business model is not the one being changed. Tiny elements within it are being changed. You know that that doesn't work. If you have a house that has a problematic foundation, and so with time things are going wrong, and you go fixing the tiny hole in the tiny hole, you fix it for 2 months, there'll be another hole. So I would say, as you wait for the change, and these kinds of changes we're expecting, you're waiting for Finland to be a multilingual country. That's going to happen, I don't know, in 10 years or 5 years. It's not going to happen next year. Are you going to wait for 10 years for your career to take off? You'll probably be very miserable by that time. At least for sure, I would be very miserable. So I would do what I can do now before the 10 years, and hope that the 10 years, if I have a child here, and I would work very hard for my child or Pascal's child, when that time comes, to have a different situation. But the situation right now is as it is. If you look at the way the Talent Boost program is being implemented, it should tell you everything, that there's discourse and there's reality. There's what is being said and there's what is being done. And don't wait. It's easy to buy into the discourse, but don't buy into a discourse that is not turning into a reality. I think we all have to make our realities. And that's why I will still say that if you do want a career in Finnish academia, learn the Finnish language. And it won't still guarantee you what you want, but learn it realistically and know exactly what you want. Once again, if you want to be a university teacher, then work towards that. Know exactly what you need. If it's a network like nobody's business, whatever that means, joining all kinds of things and doing all kinds of things just so you can, so for sure, yeah. Expect the best, what is usually said? I usually expect the worst, and it helps me because every good thing that comes is a bonus, and I work really hard until it's that bonus.
Thank you, Quivine. I'd like to open the question.
I wanted to add one thing.
Dr. Pascal, please wait for that one. Please, let them ask questions so that we'll add. Yeah, sorry, Bansi, right?
Emma.
Emma, hi, Emma. Sorry.
Actually, it's not a question, it's about the comment.
Oh, yes, please go ahead.
Okay, yeah. So the first comment I wanted to make to, I don't know.
Quivine.
Yes. She mentioned at some point that she doesn't know if there's anyone who doesn't get admission to PhD in the so very, very low. Some people have cried for 5-6 applications when they're not getting in. And not only immigrants, also females. Many. Yeah, so I think the situation is a bit different for people like maybe your situation that you came with your masters, you get to network with the teachers well, they like to your post your masters, and then you're already connected, and then they see that you have a chance, there is this opportunity, you apply, you get in. That's so different. So you don't see it from the eyes of the people who have finished maybe their bachelor's, start their work to beat, did masters, work to beat, have something, you know, they're applying. People have, if the people hear that from you, they come run to you like, can you please help us to get the
And you mean this is an application for a study right?
Yes. So people are crying for the study right when you don't fund it. They want that. They don't get it. And the biggest problem here in Finland, I think, is that most of these admissions, you have to look for the supervisor yourself. So what do you get the supervisor? Yes. You just, you're out of nowhere. But when you are there already, you have just finished your master, you already know them. And maybe there's an opportunity to see that you're connected with your master, they can tell you. But if you're outside of that cycle, I'm telling you, it's the same like when you're looking for a job. So if it was put that anywhere today that you can get a master or a PhD in this and here, like I don't know anyone does it. Everybody will run to you like this. Yeah, that's one thing. But then another comment I wanted to make on this Finnish university thing. It's not about these short contracts. Of course, like I have experience with the short contracts and being used and everything. I know the situation. But then I understand them from one side that we have been looking for with experience, we are desperate, we have an opportunity, then we're like, okay, I would just accept this. But then after a while, when you wake up and realize, okay, I've already gathered these 6 months times 5, maybe I should just drop it and look for something else. So 6 and 5, okay, I already have used about 2.5 years or 3 years. But then what the point that I wanted to make one thing is that I think what Finland is not understanding much. I don't know how much Finland is calculating the loss they're making by supporting our education and then letting us go and put our knowledge somewhere else. I don't know. I think we are losing millions. And that is not a lose-lose situation. It's a lose for Finland, it's a win for someone else who graduate and don't get a job after PhD, go to Canada, go to Africa, go to America, go anywhere. Who is losing? It's Finland. Like you have invested, even if now people have to pay tuition, but still, you are supporting the education. The government is supporting the education so much. So, for example, at the moment, I'm doing my PhD, I'm getting the support from the government and all that, and then if I finish and if I, for example, I want to work in a Canadian and after a year, and I go to work, for example, in Sweden. Who was it? Was it's Finland. That is one. But my last comment is on the work. When you're working in the Finnish academia, now I'll talk from the African point of view. The most funny thing that I'm seeing is that I don't know why the other maybe PhD students, but mostly the faculty people, why they see us as threats when it comes to projects to do with Africa. Because we know that now when you have an application, a funding application, if you put Africa there, you're almost 80% sure you will get the funding for that project. You put Africa, put innovation, put technology, we know the passwords that will help, at least someone can read your application with the yeah, the hot topics. But the funny part is you might be in an institution and there's a project to do with your own country and people are trying to hide it from you. That is something that it's really problematic. Like instead of using this chance that, oh, there's a person from Kenya here, this project is about Uganda, let's connect with her or him. Then you gain, but it's about pushing so that the person doesn't come too close because we will lose. It's a very sad thing to see that you have someone here teaching students on entrepreneurship and giving examples and doing some project with maybe Tanzania, and they have a Tanzanian there, not even inviting them for one class to come for 1 hour and tell people what. So then that is I think there is a problem. Like we are not threats. We can cooperate.
I think that's the sentiment virtually everyone has been reiterating.
Yeah.
Even Melissa, Rebekka, it's something everyone has been saying.
Yes.
I think more work has to be done,
Yes.
even from us, because we also need to be more embracing. I'm saying that for myself, because I've gone through hell, and because of that, I've kept everyone, including Finnish academia, at arm's length. But then, like Quivine said, if you're not proactive, you lose out at the end of the day. So, yeah.
That's all.
Yes, sorry.
Hi, my name is Shakur. I'm from England. So I have the right to have maybe 10 comments. So I came to visit my mom. So I'm in hospital. So, but it's lovely to be here, and I really enjoyed listening to these great people speaking in a number of areas. And I'm particularly interested around the kind of widening participation element that we talked in the UK, where the foreign academics are well encouraged to not necessarily go to employment, but also maintaining that research element of opportunities within the universities. And I really, it reflects me what I learned from in the Netherlands when I was a student, university student, where sometimes learning the language is really, really important. Not necessarily to get into employment, but also if you can't interact with your neighbor who doesn't speak English, you feel a bit embarrassed. There's so many things. Networking, you mentioned about networking. It's very, very important to learn the language. But what I don't understand as a EU member state, and particularly the white paper, you talked about the directive to employment conditions. I don't think contractually you can actually force and research within the EU to actually learn the language, depends on when the contract was signed. If the contract was signed before policy change within the university, then that employee has a right to actually reject any undertaking the language. That's my experience. Second point I want to raise is, you talked about mainly around the newly arrived foreign academics who came to this country, but what I haven't heard from the speakers is those who were actually migrant background, the children and young people who were born in this country, who came to this country as a child and gone through the education system in Finland, and then later become, probably employable in the academia. Have they been given enough opportunity equally to the Finnish heritage, white Finnish student? What I gathered, I'm Somali ethnic, and I have quite a lot of friends in Finland, and they're telling me the stories that, the kind of lack of accessibility into academia, lack of accessibility to higher education institutions. I think the issue, the challenge is quite deeper than when we're thinking, but it's not only the foreigners who just came from another country and came here, but also those who were born or either came at a very young age and gone through the education system, whether they are actually accessing the right employment or the rights equal to the white Finnish student. And I just want to know whether that is actually mandatory people to learn Finnish. That's a question I was going to ask you.
No. So as what was happening also at the University of Helsinki, so that it's a possibility. So that, for example, our early stage researchers will have the right to use 2 hours their working time weekly to study Finnish. It's their right, it's not the obligation.
Yeah.
So it's if they think that it would be helpful for them to find employment or to get more connections. So that is it's not obligatory, and it can be obligatory. So that's for sure. So yeah. And then what comes from this? Actually, in Finland we are missing the statistics from also what's this second generation immigration, and that's something that so we have anecdotal information so that these persons are underrepresented at the higher education, but we don't have actually official statistics in Sweden. In Sweden they have, so it's something that it's very odd. But on the other hand, so that actually the Finnish statistics are a little bit lying about when we are looking about how many foreigners exist in Finnish universities. There is actually more than the statistics is saying, because when you get the Finnish citizenship, so you have a dual citizenship, then you lose your foreign background. So you are Finnish from that way onwards, and so we have more foreign based, international based people working at our university, and it can be quite big difference.
And I haven't added my recommendation, but is that something that comes later?
Yeah, recommendation. One last sentence from you, Dr. Pascal, before we summarize.
Well, I would like to say it's another statistics that will show how many foreigners are researchers that rose to citizenship would be very interesting. But since I have just 1 or 2 minutes,
One sentence.
Or one sentence, one of the recommendations, if you permit,
We're not there yet.
would be that you should be thinking of structures, permanent structures, than some of these surveys. They come into my box with structured question, no latitude to say anything, and then they say, oh no, this is the statistics. We should be thinking as we think about this international thing in terms of some permanent structures. We have recommended even minority office in universities. that looks at the foreigner is already isolated here, doesn't have a father here, and so you have a problem in the university. They create mailing list, and they are all writing only about you. You are abandoned. Sometimes the results of the deliberation come out in your favor, but you are isolated. When it is problematic, they said, no, we are not bringing but a lawyer. And so on. So I think that permanent structures will solve. One of the things, and I want to give credit to Miriam, it will be remembered that Miriam opened this type of discussion. We've recommended also that this discussion should be permanent annually to hear the voice of the foreigners. Sometimes it will not be heard, but it would talk foreigners, you get foreigners also fit into the policy process. Thank you.
Just to say it's not Miriam, it's Think Africa. There are many in the team.
To wrap up, I would like to actually hear what your strategic recommendations would be going forward, both as representatives of university and advocates for international students, international staff, and union staff, and researchers who are looking for career mobility. We've heard your voice, we know your views on this, but I'd like to hear your recommendation on the way forward.
Yeah, I think inside my head there's drawers with different kinds of recommendations, but maybe at the topmost, what I think could be helpful, and that's not for us, or maybe it's for us to help the process, that it would be rethinking or not rethinking the attraction, reception, retention, integration of internationals in Finland as a whole, because higher education is one of the main parts, especially for Africans. Most of the ways, there will be a significant number of Africans. If you look at the statistics, of course, Somali background Africans are many in Finland, and they did not come through the education pathway, but the other Africans came mostly through the education pathway. And in general, I think that the attraction and the attraction rhetoric of the moment is either we do not know exactly what the intention is with attraction and what they mean when they say talent. So many times I've felt like, I don't think I am talent. I don't think I am the talent they're looking for. So the attraction and retention, even though I don't think I'm the talent, I still end up here, and there's still more people like me who end up here, and we still end up finding something to do. So whether that's an accident or that's a system that we just don't understand, because also we end up here, we study, but somehow we clean and fill Excel sheets to earn our wages. So I'm suspicious of the attraction retention system. And if I was to change something, that's where I would go. And that would mean scale back. And when you're talking about, okay, so talent boost is supposed to improve something. Exactly, let's start. What is talent? Where is this talent coming from? If it comes from Nigeria, is it talent, or is it only talent if it's coming from India? Or if it's coming from San Francisco in the United States or whatever. So this is what I would say. And then this would be systematic. So if it is recruiting students for nursing, then let them be registered nurses if they trained to be registered nurses, and not practical nurses in gerontology care or whatever. There's all kinds of tricky knots in the migration system. Nobody should expect us to understand it, because I don't think we're expected to understand it, because that's the only way we become complacent in the mess. So yeah, I don't know. My recommendation is maybe transparency before even thinking, because I'm not so sure that thinking is the thing, because I think that obviously it's a business model, and it's a business model because it profits someone. Yep. It surely doesn't, like, we may benefit, it depends on how you look at it. So I find a place to live, social amenities working, and please don't label me ungrateful. I'm grateful. The metro works. There's no metro where I come from. I'm grateful. It's just from a social justice point of view, I'm human and I'm equal to the other human, regardless of where I came from. And so equality there. So if my brain can earn it, reward me or give me the opportunity that I deserve. So yeah, again, a lot of words.
It makes sense. Melissa?
I think my recommendations are maybe less strategic and more kind of personal in a sense. It's about what you, as a person who is maybe an international person living in Finland, can do. And I think that in general, there's a reluctance to advocate for yourself or to advocate for ourselves because there's a fear somehow of, first of all, in general, we often are in more precarious situations, and there's a bit of a fear of having repercussions if we advocate for ourselves and perhaps say very clearly what we need and what we expect and what we wish for. So self-advocacy is important, and it's really one of the key things to getting more information about how to work within this system, which is hard to change right now, as Quivine said, but is something that needs to be done in the long term. So alongside this kind of personal advocacy, I think it makes sense to also advocate jointly for our rights. And really concrete ways to do that are, for example, through unions, but not just joining the union, because it's not enough. When I joined the union, it was actually much later than when I started working at the university. But even then, there wasn't that much conversation about the situation for international staff, at least in my local branch. But because I was pushy and advocating for myself and other international staff, we, for example, had an international staff member who was nominated as a shop steward to deal with international staff issues. This is, these are little successes that can add up and actually make an impact on a local scale over time. The final thing I want to say is that it takes a long time as an international person to figure out the system here, to figure out what works and who you should know and what you should know. And I think it's important that we help each other out, that we help figure out and tell each other the information, share our networks, share information, because that will make a very concrete difference to other people, whether they've been here for a little while or they've been here for a short while.
Thank you, Melissa. Dr. Pascal.
Yes.
One recommendation.
I'm picking up from her.
Thank you.
I'm trying to think. I have no data, I have no statistics for that. But I think that most of the foreigners, it will be interesting research to do. Most of the foreigners, especially Africans here, they get their first jobs when they come to Finland through their diaspora networks. Does anyone agree?
Yeah.
Their first cleaning and so on. So this makes the importance of third sector organizations. It's not by employment or fees and so on, because it's all a difficult situation. Recommendation one. One doesn't really need to be critical if you look at some of the systemic issues. There's huge information asymmetry. Because of the nature of this country, it's quite intellectual. Everybody can read. Before you go to an office, they assume that you have already read, because many people here read. So we have to also be looking at things from this information path. The system is, you cannot survive here without, many people read. So there's a lot of things sitting on the internet. They assume that we know when you never know. I am one of the persons in this country who I came into Erasmus Mundus, I got PhD funding and so on. Very nice salary situation, I went for 10 years before somebody showed me how to buy a house. So I went for 10 years. So information, we should improve and stop assuming that the foreigner knows these things. It is the same as I'm asking some of the legal issues I've gone through is whether you want every researcher to have a lawyer behind him who is international. It doesn't work. We have to start thinking how a lawyer, a foreigner knows about his rights, knows the type of contract. I fell into a situation when I knew later on the types of contracts I was signing. It was terrible. So it's not to, it would be impossible anywhere in the world to have every foreigner here have a lawyer. The third thing I would say, with your permission, is research. But the first mission of the university was teaching. With the Bologna University, the second mission, research, came at the 18th century. There's a third mission, which they call third mission, which comes with projects. You said 65% money to the university comes through projects. Universities have to recognize that this mission is there and regulate it. Look at the ethical aspects. This guy brought this project. This is how can we make sure that things don't get sour. Universities still really have to institutionalize this part, which could bring in 65% of the money, but very little has been done. And I would like to advise any researcher here that if you are coming into the university and you are through project, know that you have not yet entered. Such projects, which institution wouldn't protect itself? You know, I think the Employment Act, if I'm correct, say that it should be 1, 2, 3 contracts, and they need to be uniform before they say, look, you transit to a permanent position. Okay. Another area of institutionalization is that we want universities to cover this type of people who come into universities through contract. It should not only be teaching, because this is now an important mission of the university. If you've gone for 5 contracts, there's now the tendency to change the content of the contract so that it will not be uniform, to conform to the Employment Act. Every university acts in its interest. The last recommendation is, I've thought about how some of these issues should be. I don't know if it will be politically correct or the social welfare system will permit a country like Finland to clearly say, no, this is for our national, so that we are transparent, so that foreigners don't doubt. We brought up the issues of color, that when you fill in British applications, you say whether you are Black African and so on and so forth. They've made policies for that. They say, oh no, we cannot make about color. These things are important. And I was also doubting whether it is better. We cannot keep a system on pretense for long. I was doubting whether it should be better to say that we are nationalistic. We have to protect our people. So the people know. And there I started saying, oh no, I like the Pedro's woman. I said, because they say it clearly than we pretending. That's my last comment.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Rebekka, do you have any recommendations?
I kind of like, yeah, there's a lot of things which I absolutely don't agree with them. Summarize it. Let's put it that way. Let's put it from that way. And that's kind of, that's the one way to see the world, and another way is kind of like, I'm hoping, and I have to say, I'm thanking to Think Africa that we had this meeting and we had the possibility to have this discussion. It has, I have learned a lot, and I think that's one thing. It's like doing. My recommendation is that the universities and organizations, we need to do more collaboration.
Mhm.
That's something we need to have a more cooperation, and we need to have this more about these discussions. It is something to do also with expectation management, what the universities need to do with the international students and international staff, and that. The thing, I mean, it was a good thing saying that we can wait for 10 years and if something happens, but it has happened a lot since when I went to school, for example. The only something like different from all the white kids was that there was one girl with Romanian background, and she was there 2 weeks. That's the only thing what I had when I went to school. But that's completely different now when I'm thinking about my son who is on a 3rd grade, and 1/3 of the children have one or both parents coming from abroad, born in some other country. So the difference, and it is a huge change. It has changed, and I agree completely that what we heard in audience, that in case the Finland is aging population and needs a lot of workforce and international talents, and we are inviting and having these people, if we have the international students and we have them studying here and doing the degree here, which we know that this is excellent degree what we get from the Finnish universities, we are idiots if you let them go somewhere else. That's the fact. But it is something that we have kind of like thinking that we have this excellent degrees and we are educating people for rest of the world, and we haven't really think that they might want to actually stay in Finland. That's something that we kind of like, you really want to stay in Finland? Are you sure? It's
What's wrong?
It's kind of like everybody you want to Finland. It's like you came from where? Why? It's kind of like this is not. This is seriously one thing that we are realizing that you really want to stay here, and it's not that you only want to come here and study, but you also want to work here, and maybe after you're working here, you want to have the family here. You want to stay here. It sounds stupid, but it sounds like we are surprised that you really want to do that. Yeah, so it's definitely what my recommendation is: doing a more cooperation, having a more discussions, and getting to know more each other. And about the statistics, it's very difficult issues. For example, this was first time when we had the international student parameter. They had a lot of students telling, "I'm not an international student. Why on earth did you send for this questionnaire? I've been living here my whole life. I'm not international." And the thing is like, okay, we send this for all with the nationality is not Finnish, or they do have a double citizenship. And they're telling, I don't feel like I don't feel myself as being international. Why do you say that? And this is also the issue that we have to think that. So, yeah.
Thank you, sir. Antero.
Okay, so what I would recommend is that especially when you think about Finnish academia, about university research institutions, we have the permanent structures that can help people when they encounter problems. But these structures are meant for members. That is one of the reasons why the trade unions exist. So I would recommend that to join a trade union. We are educating ourselves towards, we are educating our audience, and we are there for our members. And then as Melissa mentioned about these local branches, we have, for example, in our University of Eastern Finland, well, we have about 700 members. And then when we are organizing official meetings, it is basically a very dull situation, so that we will read the minutes and look about statistics and so on. But actually, what we have been finding out about within the last 4 or 5 years, that more than half of the people who attend to our meetings are international. And one of the reasons is that, okay, okay, that's almost the only place where they can meet people from other departments. Because if you are working at the university, okay, if you are working at the chemistry department, it is possible that you perhaps talk with other chemists, but you don't talk with any historians. But when the trade unions, because we have members in everything, so it is a way of networking with other international staff, but networking also with the Finnish staff. And that's a very big problem. We are trying to do a lot to help international staff to find, or international members to find employment. We are trying to make some changes so that, for example, now when you would be doing your PhD or your postdoc, so that whether it would be possible so that even when the university is paying the salary, you would be able to go to work in some other places for 3 months. And this would be the way of making connections, to make network. We have these kind of systems for the master's students. We are trying to do that. Unfortunately, I can't give you promise that. That's something that we are actually written in one of our documents, so that this would be one of the ways how it would be making much more easier to integrate into Finnish employment outside of university.
Thank you so much, Antero. Crystal, you did say you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I say something. I'm going to be very fast. I'm really trying to think in terms of solutions, so I'm going to cut myself. First of all, I think if something is bad, doesn't mean we have to throw it away. And that is the reference to Paris right now. There are things we could do for ourselves. And for example, Quivine, with this kind of knowledge we have about the problem solved, it's a strength in creating a solution. Now, there's no reason why we Africans can come together to write proposals and set up research projects that would employ other Africans, and we must really do it ourselves. Now, there's no reason also why associations like Think Africa are not working more to advocate for Africans. So I mean, these are platforms where we could actually come into this, because if we're looking at a problem where it's only 30% of the graduates that are employed, then we really need to think more constructively and more innovative. Language is not going to solve the problem, because even if 100% have the language knowledge, only 30% will be employed. So we still have a problem of 70%. So I think this is a good start. This discussion is a good start, but I think we really need to sit down ourselves and think of a solution. And we need to think of platforms where we can create our own projects that will employ people to research issues concerning Africans. There's an Africa study department in University of Helsinki. Now, how many projects have we put together as Africans to collaborate with them to research problems that we are facing? None. We are waiting for the same Finnish professors to start the project, and they come and employ us. And they will say, oh, why did not employ us? But then they are researching issues concerning you. You are complaining about all the problems, but you're not thinking as somebody that can create a solution, rather you're thinking as somebody that's a job seeker. So we really have something to do amongst ourselves. And as for the universities, I think if you already know that you can't employ everybody, then I think it is a responsibility to train the PhD student to be able to start projects or to be able to stand on their own, or to be able to move out. And for example, after 4 or 6 years of doing your PhD, you don't have any teaching experience because you were not a staff. That itself is a problem. So they really need at university level to look at the courses that PhD students are taking, and they'll be able to realistically prepare them for a global market. And I think in that way, if we think in that way from the university perspective, that okay, we can't employ everybody. How do we strengthen their skills and their experiences so that they can actually be globally competitive? Then probably the courses that the students will take there as PhD students will change to be probably more entrepreneurial, more innovative, and more how you can start projects yourself, how you can get teaching experience, because that is what you need really if you want to employ for lecturing position outside Finland. For me as a PhD, I defended my PhD in 2017. I never really expected to get employment because I have been very entrepreneurial. So I've been doing my own research and looking for funding in different, from different institutions, and they are funding available. Like, Quivine, I think you have all the ideas for an innovative project like EROC. Like, think of how can we solve this kind of big problem in a creative way? And you can get the funding for 5 years and you employ other applicants. So I think this is a good start. And really, I think Africa, because it's one reason why I'm in Think Africa, it's a platform where a lot of new things can be done. And I really hope that from now we'll be able to discuss this more within ourselves, be able to collaborate amongst ourselves, and just the start of something that could create a big change.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time here.
Can I just make one more?
Do we have time for that? Just
7:30.
It's 7:30.
yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, those your comments can be made to
By email.
yes, by email. Yes. Thank you for thank everyone for coming. In summary, I would like to talk about the recommendations that our panelists have given to offered today. Quivine is suggesting that we rethink the attraction retention plan of international. She's of the opinion that it's not very honest, there's no transparency involved, and it's a call to the universities to actually look into this. And when I say look into this, I'm actually calling that they bring people like Quivine, like Dr. Pascal, like Think Africa, like Diana to the table. You can't make decisions for Africans by assuming you know what Africans need. You can't make decisions for international by assuming you know what internationals need. Give them a seat at the table, let them tell you what they need, how they need it, and where they need it. So Melissa said we should be more proactive and we should advocate for ourselves. Well, it worked for Quivine, so I guess there's a merit to what you're suggesting. And don't advocate for yourselves alone, advocate jointly. Think Africa does that does not advocate for just one person. It's working on advocating jointly for every single one of us here. And I have recently come across Diana, which is trying to do that also. So I will advocate, or I'll ask everyone here who is interested in working on Africa-related problems to join Think Africa and Diana. Then we should help one another. We have information. We actually have to share this information. We can't keep on working in silos. Working in silos is what has actually been giving us problems here. Even as Finns, Africans, we need to work jointly and together to actually break down these barriers that systematically have been put in place. Well, information is key, says Dr. Pascal, and a call for transparency in the way the university does its recruitment exercises. From what I've heard today, recruitment actually is the bane of upward career mobility for Africans and internationals in Finland. I don't know how that can be done, how we can actually work or call for a change in recruitment practices. I think that's one of the most important issues on the table here. Well, expectation management too has to be done. If you're attracting people, you have to give them the real deal. Don't promise nature and 188,000 lakes when they want jobs and they want, a way of surviving in Finnish society. And then Antero has only one thing to say: join a trade union.
You don't have to be socialist activist anymore.
Yeah. Just to end this gathering, I would like to ask you all to please follow Think Africa on all its social media platforms: Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. Join the debate. The dialogue is still going on. It's not only here. From what I hear, this is just the pilot edition of this. There'll be more of these of this event in future, online, physically, and all that. Yes, and thank you very much for coming. I would like you to tweet at about this program, hashtag Impact Finland 2022, hashtag Finnish Universities, hashtag Africans in Finnish academia. Thank you. Yes.
Please, I just wanted to something run out of my mind. First, they should also strengthen employment office for high skilled workers.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing is we want to congratulate one university here. I'm not going to call the name of that university for offering scholarship for early career Africans to come. This I have never seen that, which shows that if the system, universities also have the latitude to do things. But the Africans in Finland are saying that it will be important to look at them.
Yes.
The same will they show to bring. They should look at these ones that are driving taxis and so on with PhDs. That's the last message.
I think it's